Okay, so basically, I'm going to be directing questions to the panel. Paul has going to tell us his reasons for doing the panel, and you can offer comments and questions and raise your hand anytime, and there will be time at the end as well to do that. Okay. Check. Okay. So let's start with you guys introducing yourselves to the audience.
I'm Robert Chafe. I'm a playwright, artistic director of Artistic Fund of Newfoundland, and Dramaturge. And I will be dramaturging this piece for Paul. And a lot of people don't know what Dramaturge is. Essentially like an editor for fiction. I'll be working with Paul on the development of the piece, questioning him, provoking him, and hopefully making this thing even better than it is already, which will be a challenge.
My name is Danielle Irvine, and I'm a director, artistic director, teacher, producer.
I'm Cassie. I'm Paul, obviously. I act and direct and produce and write plays.
And I'm Leah Lewis. I guess probably why I'm here is I work at MUN, the counseling psychology program in education. And when Paul told me about his project, one of my areas of interest in terms of research is how theater and performance can be utilized as a way of teaching. I have a piece that explores chronic illness from the perspective of a dialysis patient, which I happen to be.
Okay, Paul, so we're going to start with you. I'm still a little shaky after that, I have to tell you. I don't know, maybe other people feel the same way, but I heard a lot of laughing. I heard some crying. How did you feel having that performed in front of an audience for the first time?
It's really a privilege anytime when you write something, then to have people join in and hear it. Hear what you think is going to sound like. So that was a real treat. And then of course having all of you here to react to it was also great, and especially laughing at my bad jokes. And that's a very personal story for me, obviously, on a couple of levels. So obviously living with a disability, as well as I did lose my partner Jonathan a little over 3 years ago. I applied to the Canada Council to do this play, and Robert helped me on the application of this, and one of the things that he helped me write was why I wanted to write this play. I think it's also very healing, both writing about disability, which I've written about it before, but pretty lightly, not in such a serious tone as this one. Of course, grief and losing a partner, or I'm sure everybody in this group has lost someone and have experienced grief at some point in their lives, and found both of it very therapeutic to write about. And that's what I said in my application was, I felt it was something I didn't want to write, but I had to write it. It was sort of, and I guess as an artist, you feel that need to create, to get it out somehow. So I just want to say thank you for sharing that with me.
And just explain a little bit more about why you wanted to have this discussion about disability arts for the people.
So I got a grant that allowed me to actually work on my writing for full time, which is great, from the County Council for the Arts. Before I applied for my grant, I started doing research. So I wanted to present an idea, and I wanted to make sure that nobody else was doing this. Some of the statements, I think Robert advised me to, you better be damn sure you're correct if you're saying I'm the only one, blah, blah, blah. So,
The only one doing what?
The only one doing like disability theater, or writing I know I'm not going to write a disabled play, but I wanted to see what else was out there and how other people tackled it, so my project would be original or a different take on it or a different approach. And what I discovered in my research was there seems to be a lot of what they call disability theater happening out west in Vancouver, and that there's a great group called Real Wheels that's devoted to issues such as that. And there seems to be a hub in Ontario as well of different groups, either past or present, but it does exist, and there seems to be this network. But then you get to the Atlantic region, and there doesn't seem to be that happening. It's either A, it's not happening, or B, nobody knows about it. And the research I did and everything, a lot of writers said they couldn't find anything either. So my point for this is to get people talking and talking about disability and diversity in our genre of theater, either on stage or behind the scenes, and maybe talk about, why isn't it visible, or why are people, it's not happening, why not?
Okay, let's throw it to the rest of the panel. Stop hogging that microphone. So, I'll let whoever wants to take it, and then I'll pick on you if you don't talk. So what's your reaction to the project and what we just saw, and kind of what Paul said, that he's tackling some themes that we don't usually see on the local stage?
I should get it up. Well, I think Paul is exactly right. I've been thinking about this a lot lately from a perspective of for the last 4 years running a theater company. And my theater company is an odd one insofar as it's kind of mandated to do a very specific work, and that's mine. The work that we do is a collaboration between myself and Joe and Kylie, and so that's what we do. But as an artistic director, my good friend Danielle, to the right of me here, they're always reminding me there's a responsibility that comes with that job. And that responsibility, regardless of what the mandate of the company is to, I wish I could be as good at it as her, but to be plugged into what's happening in the community in terms of emerging artists, in terms of the diversity that may exist in the community, the diversity that may not exist in the community and should be. I think, I'm not just saying this because she's sitting right here, but she is, of all you might know in this community, she's probably the one who sees the most work and engages with this community in a way that I probably should do more. But I've been thinking a lot about that, and it's becoming something under the new Canada Council mandate, new Canada Council structure that's coming into play this year. Part of the rationale behind that new Canada Council for the Arts, the public funder of the arts, for those who based in Ottawa, who have a budget of $300 or $400 million, and essentially every piece of art you see in the country is supported by them. But their new funding structure is really put in place to make sure that organizations that are getting money from them are actually reflecting the diversity that's in their communities. Because for whatever reason, and there are probably a lot of reasons systemically across the country why this exists, generally speaking, what you're seeing on professional theater stages across the country, up until very recently, even in Toronto, is the majority is white, is cisgendered, is able-bodied. There's very little representation outside of that. And the Canada Council, rightly so, says that's a bit ridiculous, and certainly doesn't reflect the full diversity and scope of what happens in our society. And I've been thinking about artistic fraud. We've been thinking about it because we look around our community and we're thinking in terms of people of color in our community, professional artists of color in our community. I always use Sharon Dahl as the example, right? She's a great author in our city who's South Asian, and I go, who else? And in terms of disability arts, I think of Paul, I think of Leah in certain contexts in terms of that kind of work. So speaking about what's actually represented to our community, the face of public art to our community is white, is cisgendered, it's able-bodied. And what responsibility we have as theatre makers and people who engage the public purse to make this kind of work to change that somehow.
Hey Danielle, where do you think we are with representing persons with disabilities on stage in Newfoundland?
I think as Robert said, exactly true. Paul and Leah, leading the vanguard. It's absolutely. Paul and I go way back, and his first production is fantastic. And other than that, that's my only experience with disability arts is through Paul. I will say I also teach at the university, and so as Robert was saying with the high schools, at the university, the past number of years, my students have start arriving from all over the planet, which is really exciting, all these new voices, and students who have different disabilities. And so I've been, had my eyes open and just my mind open to how we can work together and what we can create to make something together in a classroom with people with varying viewpoints and abilities. So that's been kind of the first awakenings, right, to other ways that we can see other people who should be speaking and performing and offering their views. So that's where I am. I'm very, very early in that kind of awakening for the arts, and excited as to where it can go. And I know I shouldn't be so surprised, but I'm constantly surprised when I spend time with friends or students who are living with disabilities about everything from just trying to get into a bank, trying to get into my theater out in Cubits. We've just this past summer made the benches removable so we can bring wheelchairs in. But I hadn't even sitting here before. I said, oh my God, I hadn't thought about performance. What would that mean for performance? So we're really early days but it feels so late.
Leah, what about you? Where do you feel we are with this? Since you're working one of two people in the province of Heracles.
I think Danielle and Robert kind of have articulated kind of very clearly the state of sort of performance and disability arts in our region. I think the piece that I'm kind of interested in bringing to the table is why. Why is this work important? I kind of have worn two hats in my professional life. I've worked as an actor for many years, and then I somehow made it into the world of the academics. But the piece that I bring with me, wearing my hat as a researcher, is just how valuable the arts can. What a large contribution that the arts, performance art, theater art, as well as visual art, but today we're really talking about the discipline of theater and performance, how it can really act as an important knowledge translator. Theater art and knowledge, using this medium to create knowledge and to create accessibility and to foster community engagement, I think is highly valuable and can actually make a lot of difference.
And do you feel like it's on the radar for people that you deal with?
I believe it's making its way into the radar. Kind of the world of research and the world of academics right now, of academia, is really kind of searching more for kind of interdisciplinary kind of research and community engaged research. And universities across the country and research institutions across the country have been talking about community engagement. So it's in the mandate of every university and every research institution, this idea of community engagement. And I think we're really good at articulating that community engagement is really important. We need to be community engaged. But we do that from our comfortable offices on university campuses and research centers. But I think these types of events and kind of walking the walk as well as talking the talk of what community engagement is in terms of research and in terms of kind of making knowledge an accessible thing involves projects like this. And that's why I feel like the arts can really play a large role in mobilizing knowledge in a way that invites every voice, and not just the voice of people who write nerdy articles, but also the voice of people who live the experience on an everyday basis. Because the scene in Paul's play that where he leaves his disabled body and kind of takes on this able-bodied body and discovers the disability therein is a piece of knowledge, which is a very visceral and very powerful piece of knowledge, by the way, is not something that is easily related to an academic article. Nor is it something that invites all sorts of expert voices in to actually engage in that conversation, which I think is what research really should be about.
So what are some of the challenges then to diversifying what we see on the stage? Disability or gender or race?
Well, I mean, it's the stories that are out there, or when it comes to new works, what are people writing? So Crippled clearly has the need for a disabled character, and I mean, the stage directions even open it up for you can be in a wheelchair or whatever, I'm hoping other people would like to do a display. I'm not gonna be involved at all, and be another person with a disability. But I don't see a lot of works like that happening, with that in mind. But I guess there's not a lot of works with a lot of people who ever might consider themselves marginalized or whatever. I mean, I guess it's not under scope unless you're living it, right? Or unless it's raised like something like this. But I think the challenges too are, what's the scope of casting, or what is happening in our universities to bring that new generation up through the ranks. Like Danielle was saying, it seems to be diversifying. I mean, I remember my days back at Memorial University, and I wouldn't audition for plays because no one told me I couldn't. I think the university age is the chance to get people out to try to audition or try that training in lighting or set design or whatever. And it's hitting them at that age when you're still developing your interests and your education and that. So more concentration on the education side and bringing people up through the ranks, I think, would be a solution, which I don't know how much of that's happening either. I don't see that a lot yet.
Anybody else?
Well, just to kind of tag on, I mean, I think part of the reason I've been asked is that Paul and I have been sort of in conversation for a while, for a year or so now, as this project has been developing, and as well as my own project. But in my teaching, it has become fairly standard in most professional programs to concentrate, to have at least a module on kind of the experience of diverse populations. It tends to be encapsulated, at least in my field, under the umbrella of multicultural. Multicultural encapsulates, gendered experiences, LGBTQ population, disability as well, right? So there's something to be said about that. But what I would like to see happen is I'd like for Paul to come to the university, and to create a forum and to create a space where Paul can present this work as almost like as a performance type lecture, or come in as an expert of his expertise of experience, which is a nerdy phrase that's in the literature, as a form of teaching.
Do we need disabled theater? And do we need special auditions? And do we need disabled artists? Or is that making things more segregated? Shouldn't the goal be to make things more inclusive?
Interesting. Okay, so I do think we have to start, just like, women's movement started by making an effort to focus on women. I think we have to make an effort to focus on disability arts in order for the door to open and for us to not have to make a special focus. I think we have to do it that way to be woken up. We have to. I think that. I don't know about special sets of auditions. I know that maybe we have to take into account for auditions in the room. I have had cast people. I cast a young man a few years ago for background on a TV show I was working on. And I thought this would be a really good opportunity to have an inclusive background for the TV series. And he agreed, and I agreed, and the ladies agreed, and we all agreed, and we went ahead and did it, not fully thinking through the accessibility of an actual film shoot with cords going everywhere and the building. And so we all kind of ran into a couple of big hiccups, but it was a learning experience for everybody. And
What kind of hiccups?
well, the cords, we tried to have a wheelchair go over these massive things for cords running everywhere. The building we were shooting in was closed for renovations, and so the elevator wasn't working properly, and we had to get up and down stairs. And there was just a number of issues, and the gentleman was very patient as we just ran into people just not thinking through locations. I didn't realize that all that was happening at the location when I said, I was like, oh, it's a hotel, perfect. Oh, so there's a gentleman there, no problem. Oh no, there was tons. But he was very generous and patient, and the crew worked really hard, and everybody to work through the problems. But until we actually opened the doors, we didn't even know what the barriers were. So I think that it starts with opening the doors and being open to listen to each other and finding our way through the inevitable, unforeseen problems that come down until we can really lower all the barriers. But I think that that's where we are, and I think we need to keep the doors open, and we need to be shaken out of our experience, whatever that is, because we're all beetling along busy in our day-to-day, our habitual patterns, and until our habitual pattern is shaken, we don't see outside it. And I don't think that we know that we're blind to possibility until possibility is shown on us.
Anybody else want to tackle that question? Do we need disabled theater?
Just to second what Danielle said about, I do think it's necessary to intentionally engage with programming that facilitates visibility. Because if you look at other marginalized groups, what happens is this cycle of, if we start with a place of intention and then learning and understanding evolves and changes, then we start to realize what's required and what's needed in order to prepare a film set for a wheelchair. But the other things that happen is plays with diverse characters start to become written. Screenplays become way more diverse in terms of the characters. When the visibility is intentionally increased through programs like Deaf and Disability Arts, and the Cultivate program that the Canada Council has hosted, when that visibility is created, then over time it becomes normalized in policy.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that, we're speaking of, just to add this brief little further context, we're speaking of industries as well that are very systemized in how they operate. The film industry, for example, is incredibly systemized operation, right down to the minute. And theater, somewhat less so, but still, there is a quote-unquote way of doing things. And so, broadening that, opening the door to that really requires asking the right questions and looking at that systematic experience of creating that work and working in that field, and understanding that, okay, well, it's typical, for example, for a theater rehearsal day to run 8 hours. But maybe we should actually open the door to that not being feasible for some people. Maybe we should open that door and have that conversation. It's typical that the set is designed and then shown to the actors. Maybe we should have a conversation with the actors about the physical limitations or issues before the design component comes in, and therefore, those kind of things. There's a very systemized way of working within this industry, and Danielle's story about the background casting with the gentleman in the wheelchair is really potent one, because I think that we make a lot of assumptions because we work in a very systemized industry that we've been all working in a very long time without having those assumptions, without that beating along being interrupted.
Okay, so final question for me is and you both touched on this a little bit, but how do we encourage more people with disabilities who might not have Paul's chutzpah and to get involved?
I think it is having events like this, and what I tried to do with this event was reach out to organizations like disabled organizations and that, and if anybody's in the audience with a senior on senior disability, it's something that's on its feet like this, to motivate them that it can be done, and there's no one saying you can't do it or no, and especially here at Big Land, I think. I think it's just letting, I don't know, it's gotten to a belief that you can do it, or people don't put out for auditions, or I've directed and everything too, and no one. Yeah, I'd say here in St. John's, no one it's been mostly white, able-bodied people who audition. I don't know if it's starting from, including myself when I direct, is making it clear that everyone's vocal. Everyone can get involved, whether it's community theater or films or whatever. I think it's just highlighting that.
Leah, final thoughts?
Just pulling from what Paul was just saying, when we see ourselves represented, our agency is fed, that we develop agency in and we develop our own voices. So if we diversify what is seen in the arts, what's seen in performance, in a way that invites all experiences, then the arts are going to become more diverse.
Danielle, do you want the mic or should I let you off the hook for the last?
I think, and when the arts are more diverse, our community is healthier. And so thank you to make this incredible.
All right, any questions, comments from the audience? Don't be shy.
Paul, one question. Growing up, was there theater or movies that dealt with disabilities that made you first kind of have the reaction that some people might have with the work you're bringing?
I don't think so. I not from my childhood. I think one of the first films that, there was one of the first TV characters that had a disability was there was a show called Ironside, which was Raven Burr in a wheelchair. And I learned about that in my adult years. I think the representation of persons with disabilities have been not very frequent. But I think I remember being in high school, I don't even know my age now, but there was a show called Life Goes On. And I think the son had Down syndrome. And I think it was the first show I knew where the character was just an integrated part of the other characters. And the show did well, in the ring. So it was around for 4 or 5 seasons, I think. And I think that's the first show I remember proving that you can have this integrated into a show. It doesn't have to be a preachy show about disability every week. It's just an integrated component. And what proved that works, I think, is that it did okay in the ratings and people were watching it because it was a well-written show, not because it was an issue in the show.
Interesting take off that. If you think about it, there's a line in the play where you actually say, oh yeah, I forgot, I don't have to go to the bar where it's okay to be gay, right? If you look at television, advertising, all the media today, being gay is irrelevant. That's where we need to get with disability.
Yeah.
And like you say, it took a concerted effort from brave souls to put it out there and make it, in your face, as they used to say. But now, I know a lot of people in their 20s, and they're like, well, yeah, he's gay, straight, or whatever, I don't care. And they really don't see it as an issue. Whereas when we came up, that was a big deal.
That's a very good point.
I just, in terms of representation, I think what you're saying about it being so one-sided, that the total individual with disability, I was thinking, who have I ever seen dialysis represented? All I can think of is that Mrs. Lonsfield Magnolias, and then she died. But that disability is only one feature of an individual, this this comprehensive person that has a sex life, that has a professional life, that has a family life, that has everything that everyone else has, and that representation as what is happening, is currently happening, it's not done yet, with LGBTQ, is not yet happening in terms of the disability world. We still get these kind of token, one-sided representations, which is highly problematic.
I have a question about disability in arts and culture. I was wondering if you have an opinion about able-bodied actors playing the roles of disabled characters in film and television.
It's hard. What we see that's really popular movies or TV, it's Hollywood, right? So there's a certain physical perfection that's always wanted. And I think in the past that's why it's been persons able-bodied playing persons with disabilities, and they win Oscars for it and all that. And although I do remember Children of Lesser God, Marley Allen, one of the best actors. She was the first one who her character was deaf, and she was a deaf actress. Who knows what came her or the show first. But I think about that a lot, and yeah, it would be a hard pill for me to swallow. To we have a few minutes. I can tell a story. When I was going to school, this is way back. When I was going to school in Toronto, there was a casting agent, because I was involved in theatre in Toronto as well, and a casting agent contacted me because they saw me on the street or something, and they were casting this movie called The Mighty, and the producer was Sharon Stone, and it was based on a book where the kid is like friends with a bigger guy, and he helps him physically, and the lead character is supposed to be in leg braces with crutches, and sort of slumped over in that, and they contacted me because I fit the physicality perfectly, and through going back and forth and everything, it turns out they didn't want me for a role. They had me in to teach Kieran Culkin how to walk with crutches and that. That was a hard pill to swallow. But like I said, it's a problem. I'm very talented, so.
Did you tell them that?
Wasn't as rude back then.
But am I correct, remember you telling me that story, and you found that out at the audition, they called you in, what you thought was going to be the audition turned into.
Yeah, I found out, I thought I was going to either a screen test or something like that, and I wasn't even ready until they let me in the room, and you're Kieran Culkin in this bodysuit, straps and all that. And this typical Hollywood, they didn't ask me if that was okay, and if they had asked me if it was okay, I probably would agree, but I had like a week's notice or something, but, so that's sort of my brush there, but, my point is, seeing that, and then, I never did see that movie, I never watched it, but, that's a hard pill to swallow, that, that person can walk out of the studio able-bodied. And, it's something to be said about, living experience of, with someone with a disability, bring more to that role than someone who hadn't, if the casting people can find the right actors. But then you get into the trap of, okay, so then if the character is a lawyer, should we only hire actors who were also lawyers on the side? And so it's like, where do you find that balance, right? And then you gotta remember you're also selling a product, which is a TV show, a play, or whatever, and it has to be the best actor for the role.
Right.
But, yeah.
And it also speaks to what Robert was saying a little while ago about how the arts as an industry has to also face the tensions of having to adapt to working with artists who have disabilities. So my project, I can't do my show every day because of the nature of what the show encapsulates. So that's gonna impact any company or director that I work with. What do you mean you can't do your show every day? We've gotta make so much money off that show. I'm not gonna make a lot of money off that. And so the point being that I think the industry also has to kind of face that tension of what it means to adapt to diversifying the artists that we're working with and the performers that we're working with. Because it's gonna mean film and TV, the hurry up and wait industry are gonna have to adapt to those needs. And I think, it's a richer industry because of it, in my opinion.
Kind of picking up on something that Paul said, I had a real sympathy, but an understanding of, for example, there was an understanding of a movie that comes out like Dallas Buyers Club, for example, is the one that comes to mind, where the number two, and then we have the list cast, right? The cast. Number two in that movie was I'm blanking on his name.
Jared Leto?
Jared Leto, thank you, who's playing the transgender person in that movie. And there was, whenever that happens, there is an outcry, there's questioning, there's a sort of questioning. And part of me I understand that, because that is a $30 million movie that's going to have to get made and have finances, and I get all that. And so I don't necessarily agree with it, but I get it. But where I really scratch my head is when there is a program with a walk-on of a Law and Order, where there's a walk-on part of a transgender person and they're just in for that one scene, and they hire a dude to do it, and they don't actually hire a transgender person to do it. And the show is not resting upon the financial ability of a nickname draw. They could do it. They could actually represent that community, honestly, and they don't, and that's a problem. I think that I find completely bizarre and inexplicable why they don't do that.
I think we'll have come a long way when we go to cast them and we don't even think about the fact that, oh, they should look this way, or they should be this many females, or they should be, you just don't think about it anymore. That's when we'll come a long way.
And I 100% agree, as somebody who is doing the casting, to try and create the real world. Now, the real world that's true to the story and true to the script depends on the story and the script. So it is a real call to arms for writers when they're creating up their worlds to have that world represent the world around them. I work on a period TV series as well, which slots things because of the period. And as a woman, I'm always like, how do you speak for women in here? But the reality, the historical reality that they're working in is a little restrictive. But when you're looking at a more modern context piece, then opening our eyes and looking for opportunities to bring people in for all different walks of life, that's been something that we very much try to do. But really seeing the stories come alive and having the stories put out there is going to just trigger more stories. And, us getting as an audience the chance to receive your stories, it changes how we think and see. And now other people will get up there and maybe emboldened to write stories and tell their story, and that's how it starts. And then we all benefit.
So one more question?
I'm gonna launch a doozy. Well, I'm thinking about excellence in art. I'm thinking about the opportunities to cultivate your skills. With actors in film, how do you get a chance to cut your teeth and sharpen your skills if you never get cast? I feel it's our obligation to go to those people and invite them to come in and actually go speak to people instead of, because call-outs are nice, I think they're great, but it's that white cis world that we operate in, and it doesn't encourage people to come, and then people get a chance to act many times and get cast many times. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, because I feel like with the whole we don't want to cast somebody who's actually got a disability because they might not be a really great actor. It's like, but they are a good actor, it's just they haven't had the same exposure. It has to be intentional. You have to invite people in and then foster the ability, foster the opportunities to grow as an artist, because the odds are stacked against many people.
Yeah, and I think maybe what I'm hearing you say is we have to be not just intentional, but doubly intentional by saying, this person is doing it, this person is doing it, that person is doing it, phone them up, invite them to come, invite them to talk, invite them to facilitate a workshop, invite them to write their story or whatever. And be extremely intentional about it, and so that we are kind of creating that space.
If you're a person of underserved community in this city, you are, let's pretend Paul is in it, let's pretend Paul and Leah aren't in the city. And so you are a person with mobility issues who's in a wheelchair in this city, and you want to be an actor, and you see an open call, anyone is welcome to come down and audition. What kind of courage would it take with all you've ever seen at the LCU Hall? Well, first of all, for many years, you were actually wheel-filled with bird shit infested until the Renault happened, right?
Yeah.
But really, how unwelcoming. The only thing you've ever seen on the stage upstairs, and I shouldn't say the only because I haven't seen everything, but 99.999% is representing not you. What kind of incredible courage and gumption it would take to walk down there. And Paul says it's so, he's so blasé about it, I just auditioned. And I remember Paul showing up to audition for Shakespeare the Sea, and he was just so he's a good actor, he's here, he was cast, we worked with him. But that, and I think, I'm not saying it was a courageous act for you, because it may not have been a courageous act for you, I don't want to make that assumption. But for a lot of people, that would be beyond terrifying thing to do. And so I agree, you have to we're doing a project, Artistic Broad's doing a project right now with the Law of Learning, trans monologues. It's happening in March, where we have young transgender youth in the city creating performance pieces. Probably going to change the title monologues because it actually doesn't encapsulate what the show is going to be. But For the Law of Learning had done one a year or two before that was the queer monologues, and there was a thing planned. Queer monologues, 15 people show up and they wanted to write shows about their queerness and put them on stage. And what we encountered right away when we put out the call for the trans monologues was a very different thing. And you actually had to go cajole people. You had to reassure them you had to inform them what it was, you had to reassure them it was a safe space, you had to reassure them that they could do whatever they wanted. You had to really welcome them in, not just open the door, you had to go and walk through the door with it. And
Send the car out to pick them up.
exactly, yeah. And let them know that no, this is actually for you, and we, when we say everybody, we mean everybody.
Robert, you have the mic, and I'm handing it all over to you now.
What do I do?
Featuring remarks. Thank everyone.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you to Paul for writing this play, and thank you for Leah for the work that you do. That you do, Leah, that I know that has been inspirational to Paul in terms of creating this piece and going there. And yeah, thank you. I'm kind of sad to say it, but I'm really glad you guys are in this community because you worked for a long time. Leah was living in Montreal for a long time. She came back for Christmas and stuff, but she wasn't living here and working here for a long time. And Paul wasn't here for a long time. And you can feel this community in terms of this issue, but also a lot of other things. You can feel this community just growing and breathing a little bit better because you're here. So.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you everybody for coming. And I know I said it in the notes or whatever, but I've lived in a few places now, and there's no place like the city and the arts community, and just saying you have an idea or you want to do a project, be surrounded by these talented people I acted with earlier. It's amazing. We all come from different experiences, different levels in our careers and that. And it's just so inclusive, and so that's a testament to our arts community and everybody here tonight. So I really appreciate it.